Beer here back in the Fantasy Bar Week 13 NFL six-pack ready for you to go here. 6 guys fresh off the tap for you on FanDuel and DraftKings, including my favorite correlations, including a game stack and a quarterback receiver pairing on the cheap. Got some mid-range running backs in some smash spots here. More value at the tight end position and a beast of the week I think you definitely want to spend up on this week in your lineups. Who are we talking about? Only one way to find out. It's time to belly up to the Fantasy Bar. Welcome in, guys. Week 13 edition Beers Daily Fantasy six-pack season cruising right along here, but we are back. 6 of my favorite plays for Week 13 on FanDuel and DraftKings. Thank you, as always, for stopping by and checking out today's video. Before we get into the plays, couple things. First thing, thumbs up button. Take a second, click that. Really helps us out. That's the tip jar on this free video, so thank you very much for that. Subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell, and check out our props and pick'em package over at RotoGrinders and Scores and Odds. That link in the description of the video. Team been killing it on the picks, up a ton of units. Go and check that out when you are done here with this video. All right, let's get into it here on slate of games here. We do have some bye weeks. We also have Zach Moss. We're not going to cover him here in the video. Going to be highly owned, too easy. We're going to give you some other plays outside of this cheap running back who smashed the Tennessee Titans last time to give you some other options for your lineups. Now let's start at running back, who is not Zach Moss. Let's start with running back Bijan Robinson of Atlanta. So we know the whole Arthur Smith debacle, Tyler Algier, blah, blah, blah. But finally, we have gotten to the point after months that Bijan Robinson, the primary back in this Atlanta backfield. I don't think that changes here moving forward. Over the last couple weeks, ton of opportunities. In fact, over the last couple weeks, averaging 23 opportunities. That's carries plus targets per game, and it's turned in to some nice fantasy production, averaging over 22 DraftKings points per game here, and a great matchup here with this Jets defense, who have really struggled against the run. We saw Raheem Mostert house 2 tutties last week against them. We're talking bottom 10 in rushing yards, receiving yards, receptions, receiving touchdowns, and fantasy points. All the things that Bijan Robinson does well here, the Jets do not do well. Great spot. Guy I'm going to be anchoring a ton of my lineups with here for Week 13. All right, let's get some value at the tight end position with David Njoku of Cleveland. So targets galore here for David Njoku, exactly what we want to see, especially at these cheap prices here, just 4,100 on DraftKings. And we're talking 11 targets per week for him in this offense. And it has not mattered who the quarterback has been. Deshaun Watson, we've had DTR, we've had PJ Walker, and yes, we may get the return of Joe Flacco here in this offense. Does not matter. Njoku, really a focal point here for the Cleveland Browns. We're talking 8 or more targets now in 5 of the last 6 games, 5 straight double-digit DraftKings points games. We've yet to see that massive ceiling game out of him. I think we could get that spot here this week. The Rams have given up 5 receiving touchdowns to the tight end position, second highest in the league, 6 most fantasy points to this position. David Njoku, great value here against this Rams defense. All right, back to running back again here with Rachaad White of Tampa Bay. So Derrick Henry got it done for us last week, 2 touchdowns in that game with Carolina. So I want to go right back to this matchup. It's a matchup that we've been exposing all season long here against this Carolina run D. But Rachaad White really been a workhorse, and we're not paying workhorse prices on this guy. We're talking almost 20 touches per game over the last 4, 16 or more DraftKings points in every single one of those games. Carolina giving up a ton of fantasy points. Only the Denver Broncos have allowed more on the season, and they've allowed 16 rushing touchdowns to the running back position. Tampa Bay, home favorite here, which we love. Great spot here for Rachaad White. I think he finds the end zone at least once, potentially twice here in this matchup with Carolina. All right, quarterback up next with more value with Sam Howell of Washington. So we've seen the good and the bad here from Sam Howell, but week in, week out, we definitely get the better in fantasy than he is in real life. Hasn't generated a ton of wins for this Washington team, but has been generating a ton of fantasy points for our lineups here. And you look at the spot this week against Miami. Washington, 9.5-point underdogs, total nearing 50. We know the Miami Dolphins are going to put points on the board, and we know the Washington Commanders are throwing the ball more than anybody right now. So you put a team that's throwing a ton in an underdog spot. We could see Howell putting the ball in the air an absolute ton here. 300 or more passing yards now in 4 of the last 5 games, 20 or more DraftKings points in 5 straight games, plus the upside that he gives us with his legs. You add it all up, a guy throwing a ton, a guy that's a big underdog, and some cheap stacking partners. Give me some Sam Howell here in week 13. All right, speaking of stacking partners, we're going to go with the cheapest of that group. We're talking wide receiver, Curtis Samuel. I think you can definitely double stack this team. Again, a lot of value on this team, whether you go McLaurin, Dotson, Logan Thomas, but Curtis Samuel, 4,100, an absolute steal here. We've seen multiple games this season where this guy's given us a very big return on these numbers here. 12 targets for him last week against Dallas in a game they got blown out. We could see a very similar game flow, game script here against Miami. As we talked about with Sam Howell, Miami has had issues with the wide receiver position. 3rd most receptions per game allowed to wideouts, 6th most touchdowns allowed, and the 11th most fantasy points here. All of these guys in play for Washington. Give me the cheap one here with Curtis Samuel this week against the Miami Dolphins. All right, it's time. Take a look at my favorite play for week 13. Before we do that, let's continue our Beast of the Week contest. Easy to play, free to play, and most importantly, a thank you to you guys for all your support on these videos. All you got to do, head to the comment section after you've clicked that thumbs up button and guess fantasy points on DraftKings this week for my Beast of the Week. Whoever's got the closest guess, you're going to win a free month of RotoGrinders Premium NFL just for hanging out here in the Fantasy Bar. And while you're down there, I want to know who your top play is. Your 10 in the bar. Who is your Beast of the Week? Sound off in that comment section. All right, let's wrap this baby up with my favorite play, Max, Beast of the Week. All right, Beast time. We owe you one more wide receiver, and if there's one spot I am spending up on this week, it is on Tyreek Hill of the Miami Dolphins, this week's Beast of the Week. So giving you the correlation here with Tyreek Hill against this Washington defense, there's some great spots to spend up on this week. There's also a ton of value, so be very creative when making these lineups. But Hill been about as consistent as we could ask for, 25 or more DraftKings points in 8 of his 11 games. 5 of those games have gone for over 31 DraftKings points, and this Washington defense about as bad as it gets. 2nd most fantasy points allowed to the wide receiver position. No team giving up more receiving yards or receiving touchdowns. 18 already allowed, and we know Tyreek Hill on that chase for 2,000 yards. I think this is a game Tyreek Hill could go over 200 yards receiving. We're going to go big on this one. Great piece in a game stack, even if you didn't want to go with the Washington side. I think the best play on the high end and on this slate, Tyreek Hill, easily my favorite play on the board in this week's Beast of the Week. All right, guys, that'll do it for our Week 13 six-pack here. If you have any comments, questions, or feedback, as always, hit me up in that comment section right below the video. Don't forget, fantasy points for the Cheetah on DraftKings for your shot at a free month of RotoGrinders Premium. Check out our props and pick'em package, and also SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. Eric Bine for STL Cardinals and myself every Sunday night, 6 to 9 Eastern, hanging out, talking about all the games, live look-ins, all the fantasy implications. Come and check that show out Sunday nights, channel 87, 6 to 9 Eastern for RotoGrinders.com. I am Beer saying salut, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Best of luck here in week 13, and we'll see you next week.
Hey, thanks for checking out our videos. If you want more expert advice on DraftKings, FanDuel, or any other daily fantasy sports, make sure you check out the current videos playlist